Janbask training. Learn and grow.
Welcome you all to BA training session 5th. Today we'll be talking more about requirements. What kind of requirements are there? What's the importance of IT business project management? Then we'll be talking about enterprise stakeholders, functional and non-functional requirements, overview of requirements engineering, and we'll be talking about the requirement traceability matrix that's been used out for gathering or tracking requirements. And then we'll be talking about design and re-engineering. Okay. First of all, what is a requirement? A requirement is like basically a condition or a capability needed by a stakeholder to resolve a problem, or the client wants to achieve a desired objectives are called requirements. He wants something you to take care of. He wants you to something develop something so that he can achieve the motive or probably the conditions that he wants looking out for or the objective he needs to meet it up are all part of the requirements. Conditions, capability that must met or possess to a solution, component, satisfy a contract, formally impose documents. Probably with the help of capabilities, we have solutions, IT structures. We try to create a capability around those documents, standards, getting into contracts or getting it everything written down and imposing them apps are all part of requirements. The documents representation of a condition or capability as in one or two. So let's move on with what all the requirements are basically. Our requirements may be unstated and implied by the requirements. Elicitation, analysis, communication of requirements are major understanding that needs to ensure what the client actually wants, what you really want to develop it, and are you documenting all those things as part of the requirement. Moving on to the next is requirements. The software requirements are described of features, functionality, or the target systems. Whatever the client wants to make in, suppose he comes up and says, hey, I want to create a replica of an Amazon, but I want certain changes in that. I don't want like a dashboard to be as looking like right now on the Amazon. It should be looking like a Facebook profile, but the shopping app should as the Amazon is going right now. So you need to make sure on that. Requirements convey the expectations of the user from the software products. So you need to make sure the software products that are entered are the requirements really there. Requirements are characterized logically as must have, should have, could have, or wish list. So whenever you are having negotiations or like kind of requirement gathering with a client, you need to first make sure what all they really want. And so how we divide it is whatever the requirements we are getting in, we divide it into four basic categories on the logical basis that whatever the clients really want in. So we called it as software cannot be said operational without them, or we can't say we can't go live because of them. There are some that, yes, enhancing the functionality of the software should have is must here. Whereas in the could have section, software that can permanently still properly functions with their requirements falls under the could have section. Whereas the wish list, these requirements do not map to any objective of software. So in the wish list section, these requirements do not map to any objectives of software. So even if we not gonna go with these kinds of requirements, we are still good to survive on those areas. So requirements basically needs to be integrated on four areas. Why the developers and the softwares must have implemented, should have, it's a matter of debate that which list can we keep in the software updates or not, or how we generally used to go with when the first phase is like and the first few releases we only go with must and should have, where we talk about wish list and could have to be the future enhancements, or probably once we are done with the major part which helps in like operational of a system, probably if we talk about again taking an example of Amazon app only, in such cases we will be only doing the first of like getting all the products in, getting their naming conventions, getting their pictures being added, their price, and a lot of multimedia activities that needs to be there, promotional activities. All those comes under the must and should have sections. Whereas if you talk about code or wish list, that can be like certain kind of like a flashy ad needs to be there, or do we want to put down some sales, or do we want to put down some film stars or like some renowned personality on the app so that they can advertise more about certain products, these kinds of things. Or like probably we're going to have notifications, right, adding more than 5 addresses, these kinds of things, because that's not stopping your business or your functionality. That's just like an additional features giving it to the client. So for such cases, you need to make sure that these are being done at the future level or the future enhancements. So in such cases, we take care of the wish list and the could have. That will be done under future enhancements. Whereas must have and should have sections is something that we really need to take care at the first end. So even in that, to more enhance that one, since like must have and should have we have already done because we have bought the Windows right from Microsoft, and they are bound to help us out that all the functionalities should work. But if you talk about future enhancements or their support, that will not be there. So for that could have, they have already given us a notification well in advance, like 6, 8 months back, that hey, starting end of this year, I will not be like supporting out the Windows 7 upgradation, notification, any kind of issues you report, nothing will be given. So your system is still working. What if you could have upgraded out to Windows 10? That would be really great. But as of now, your operations are not impacted by that. So that's giving you well intimation around 6, 8 months back that hey, something may happen in 2021. But before that, please get your system upgraded whenever you like it. But it doesn't mean that your system will stop working. It will still work on Windows 7 and it will be operational even in 2021. But if you face any issues, there will be nothing, no one from Microsoft to help you out. Got it? So this is how we categorize out the requirements, like what sort of requirements are there coming in from client, or we document them all, build them into categories, right? So these categories or something like that is not built up on the functional requirement document or the BRD, right? This is something that's been done on like separate Excel that we usually create, where what we do is we put down the functionalities like in the must have that okay, we want dashboard, we want products, we want their advertisement, their pictures and everything in the must have section. In the should have section, we're gonna have like the pictures, their dashboards, their payment gateways, right? This is how we are categorizing out the functionalities in each quadrant, right? Similarly, like for the could have, we're going to have future enhancements or like notifications. Client can add around more than 10 addresses, right? They're going to save around like 5 credit cards. And this is how, what all the supporting activities are there, we can add it to the could have section. Whereas in the wish list, we'll be adding that anything like in the future may come in, like you are adding the Google Maps to it, right? You want to track online where your product is, right? All sort of features like the wish list features can be there as a future enhancements once your actual product is stable. So such kinds of things usually happens when we the our actual product or our actual motive is getting all done, and we are now working on the wish list part where we are adding future enhancements to the product. Okay, moving on to what all the different attributes of a requirements are. Now we are in the phase like when we are having a discussions with a client around requirements, what sort of requirements we are taking in, what all the objectives of the requirements are. We have elicited few requirements. We discussed on using brainstorming, multiple discussion sessions, using some docs, right? Or they provided us with some brochures and everything. We talked around the requirement part. We gathered some data. We started writing out the BRD, like the business requirement document, or some usually even call it as functional requirement document as well. What we are doing, how we will be doing it, what sort of things we'll be doing in. For all these preparations, we'll be using out the requirements. So what all the different attributes are there in the requirements, like the unique ID. Every requirement will be having out a unique ID so that in the future, if you want to track it, you're going to have a separate unique ID attached to it. That sort of thing needs to be there. On what date it's been created, what is the current version of the document, the business document, because what happens is when you are in the document creating phase, right, every time you're having a discussion with client and based upon that you're making changes. So you need to make sure that every time you're creating a version of it, that what you changed in the previous version, what you're changing in this particular version, and this is how you're gonna keep on changing that out. So the version even needs to be changed on regular intervals. Post that, then you need to even make sure like who is like the assigner or who is the author of the requirement, right? Somewhat, let me show you that a business requirement somewhat looks like this. This is like a function requirement document that we have created in where we added out objective. You can see on which page number we are, what is kind of related to functionality, like the Office system that we have created. This is the doc version, right? And this is the references if we need to add it. Who is the author? If there are multiple authors, you need to mention that. And then you start writing out the requirements. A requirements introduction, what all the details you need to add it, but depending upon your thing, so it's important. We need to keep on adding those details over here. So post that we have, it's been assigned to whom? who is working on those requirements right now. Probably there are even things happen that being the project is so vast, we have multiple BAs there in the organization. Or there are like multiple organizations that has like more than one or two BAs or like even three BAs in a project. So you need to make sure who is writing out on what, like what all the requirements are be written by like me, Kamlesh, Om, Ashwini, anyone else. So we need to make sure if you have multiple BAs in the team, they need to add their names, their version IDs, and on what date they have created it. So that in the future, if you want to reference that, you can reach out that person directly and can sort the issue if you need any clarity or some details around it. And this is how the ownership even comes in picture, that this is something that you have deal with the client, and if any clarification is required from any team member, anyone from the team, any devs or anyone else, you can add those out over here. Then we have requirement status, then we have priority, then we have complexity. What is the priority of that requirement? Is it under the must have section? Is it under the could have section? Is it wish list? Or they want these requirements on the first phase. This is something really important, that they want to take a look at the first level only. These sort of priority requirements are there. What is complexity? Origin, source of the requirement. What is the origin, source of the requirement? Is that directly coming in from the client? Are we having any supporting docs? If yes, we need to tag it out to the project, the BRDs or the FRDs, right? What all the requirements rationalism are, what all the different stabilities are, what all the requirement stakeholders are, what is the due date by when we have to get those delivered. All sort of requirements and discussions needs to happen with the client using all your brainstorming sessions, your regular meeting sessions, or multiple other things. So that became as an output that what finally needs to be taken care. Importance of an IT project. So as we discussed about this project earlier, right? We have even seen these pictures earlier. So what we developed and what we finally is being asked for and what we finally developed, there is a big difference in that. So this kind of a problem, as I mentioned earlier in my training sessions as well, this is something a problem that usually, or like I would say like in 40 to 50% of the cases, this problem happens. What the client keeps on explaining. But what happens is like how the requirements phases comes in picture. Clients give you some supporting docs, some Word docs, or something like that to you. You guys take a review, you review those up, right? And based upon that, you finalize like what needs to be taken care, what need not to be taken care. Then finally, you started drawing, making designs, creating wireframes, creating structures, creating flowcharts, and other stuffs accordingly. So the customer explain you in such a manner that you need a tree that has a saw and that's gonna have three like paddles to it. Whereas this is what you finally leaders understood. And this is what they finally system analyst designed it. This is the programmer that did it, and finally they created this one. And finally you went up, the project documentation happens like that, and finally this has been created. So what has been asked and what's been developed, there is a big gap in that. So these gaps usually happens just because of the reason that you have either not understood the requirements well, or you have made certain assumptions that is not as expected, or you have not made the right assumptions, or the system understands those assumptions are really not correct. So you need to make sure whenever you are in the requirement phase, you need to deal the client in such a manner that you need to even keep on checking with them that whatever you have thinking, or you are whatever you are framing a picture in your mind, is that correct. You need to have some supporting docs, some supporting pictures, flow diagrams, right, and other mock-ups. So these flow diagrams, mock-ups is going to be coming up in our future classes, just because I want to first go through the requirements. So I'm just giving you all those examples that why those are even important. So preparing of the requirement documents, flow diagrams are even important part of the requirements, where you need to check like whether the saw is there, whether you're creating the right pictures, you're creating all the flow charts, you're creating the wireframes, you're doing certain other requirements, right? That all will be part of the requirement gathering phase. You need to make sure you have any supporting videos, any sort of projects, brochures, written documents, any sort of documents that are there are all part of the requirement documents that you need to take care. So from the past, or like if you talk about the cases that's been observed out from the BA level, it's been observed that cases or the like the failing of the project happens due to following reason. So the incomplete requirements, around 33% of the project fails usually. Lack of user involvement, around 12% of the cases falls. So if you take a look out of these all realistic points, you will see the incomplete requirement leads to highest level of failures, 33%. Even talk about lack of executive support, it's something like 9%. Change in requirement, it's something 8.7%. Lack of planning is 8.1%. No systems need, it's 7.4%. But these are some of the case studies that's been brought up like from past like research that's been done by IIBA. That's an official institute for certification of BA. So they have released out this stats that was something around from I think 2012. So where they predicted out that most of the failures of the project happens just because of incomplete requirement. Either we don't understand that, or either we understand it but we can't write it up in clear details on the requirements, or we can't really understood, or like we can put it up the same what we understand there on the documents, or even if we put it up the same on the documents, we can't meet the expectations of the client. We usually either forget to get sign-offs, or client thinks so you're thinking the same way, but on the documentation part it's missing. All these kinds of things are either incomplete, or we are not facing the real crux of what the client really wants in. So such kinds of things usually happens. This is a very critical topic to be understandable, that what's your wider thought should be, how you need to deal with the client, right? You need to make sure that everything is jotted down there on the documents, right? Either it's like these days like requirements are creating out the requirement docs is less. Now we are moved on to user stories being in agile, but the same thing needs to be done on those user stories, breaking down the work into smaller chunks. But that has to be there. The work will be there, but instead of having it on documents, you will be having them in user stories. But yes, each and every separate topic needs to be there. So most of the cases, the failures led to, or the culprit, as you mentioned, is like the incomplete requirements. So in such cases, it's first of all totally depends upon what the BA understand that project, that business, that domain, that area of work, and how he understand it well, right? So I'm telling you how that can be improved basically, because in every project you will be having a different understanding. It will be related to a different business, be it it's IT, be it it's any functionality, web related to manufacturing, related to healthcare, be it it's like insurance, be it it's like e-commerce segment, anything can be there. So few things first needs to be taken care is like you need to well understand the existing business first, how that's working in, who all the clients are, what is their demands are, how they are working in, what sort of requirements are there, what the client actually wants. Do we have already developed that in the past, or did our company have developed it in the past? Do we have any SMEs related to that in our company? If not, can we hire someone from outside? If not even that possible, what the client really wants in, right? Any supporting docs you need to check with clients on regular basis. I know like client will not be reviewing all your requirements and getting into all those like contents and gonna go through each and every document. Client don't have this much time, but you need to play smart enough that the client takes a relook at like what you developed in, or what you really thinking it's gonna be there, getting certain kind of sign offs from them that hey, this is something we want, as this is something a sign off needs it required here. All sort of these things needs to be taken into picture. What is needs to be taken care of, how you going to develop it, what sort of things will be there, right? How you going to negotiate on what factors are will be applicable, what are not. All these thoughts needs to be there into those pictures. This is how you can safeguard them. Other than that, what you can create is, we'll be coming on that, there is called as requirement traceability metrics as well, where you're going to track the requirements with the functionalities that are there. So that is even helpful when you're tracking requirement related to one particular thing. You have multiple requirements. There are certain other ways, like you keep on involving clients and getting regular sign-offs from them on functionality basis. Instead of getting a sign-off on the complete requirement, let's go with a sign-off on requirement basis. So these days now in Agile, what the clients, being a smarter way just to avoid these failures, right? What the clients and the BA is doing these days now is, since we are now started working in the Agile culture, we are getting requirements being signed off from client on user story basis. Hey, that we develop these 10 user stories because we are broken down into short things. So we can have internal pre-groomings with the client. We can have brainstorming session. Hey, this is something that we created based upon our discussions, and these are certain mockups that have been attached to a user story. So can you just take a relook at it? These are certain the supporting docs that you mentioned me, and based upon that we did that. This is how it's right now going in the market. Like suppose if you're creating an e-commerce platform, hey, Amazon doing the same way, and we have created something like that. So as a reference or an example, we have taken this as, so this is what the similar things we are looking at for you. So is that fine? So this is how what we are doing is just to make ourselves sure we're adding certain videos, certain supporting docs, we're adding certain existing functionalities, right? So that the client will get a picture that it would be somewhat similar to like that. So just helping the client to make more accurate decisions and helping ourselves, our company, to not fall into any failures at the later stage. These are some of the ways we can avoid those such situations. We can't really say that, hey, there is 100% solution that we can't get into that. No, there is always a possibility, but there are ways to avoid such things. Getting more into detailed requirements, getting requirement specific, sector specific, right? Adding videos, mock-ups, charts, documents, pictures are some of the supporting ways that we are helping out a client. Hey, this is what I understand. Can you just review what I understand is correct? Can you just share with us a confirmation that you and me are on the same page? This is how we can move forward on certain those areas. From moving out from waterfall to agile, this is again one of the important reasons, because what we do in earlier things, we create 100-page docs, we get it everything, we send it across for a client to review. He usually don't review that, he just look out for important sections and gives a sign off. Later we ending up into conflicts. Hey, I created this doc of 100 pages, I sent it across to the client, and clients have given me a sign off. That means that everything that's written on document he agreed upon, but which is actually not the case. Client have not gone into deep and dive information, and then we ended up into conflicts. Sometimes I've even seen projects got go back, we ended up into legal conflicts, we ended up into financial conflicts, we ended up into legal suits as well, right? Lawsuits been added, suing even been done, they sue the company, all sort of things even happen. So guys, please make sure, being as a requirement, you very have a responsible job, you're dealing with the clients. So all sort of things I've seen in my career that had happened. Clients clearly articulated on email that whatever the documents that we have created it, they are fine with that. And they agreed and they ask us to move forward even. And they have even released out 25% of the payments of their contract. And once post two releases, they are coming back and saying, hey, this is what we are not thinking of. This is not you develop the right path. So right now, whosoever's problem is, that could be there, but I'm telling you, these kinds of situations do happen. So you guys need to make sure that whatever the requirements you're targeting, you're creating in, client needs to be in sync with that on regular basis. Broken down the requirements into smaller chunks, having a discussions with client, getting those signed off is a good amount. It seemed like you need to travel 1,000 miles. What happened in the complete 1,000 miles, no one is aware about. Instead, you have to sum up your picture of like every 10 miles what happened, and you put it up in one like folder and ask like someone to review. So probably that's the better way if he really wants to understand what happened during the 1,000 miles. So every 10 miles, you're gonna have something in your bucket that he gonna review it and gonna give you that, hey, yes, I think that's fine. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm not looking for. This is what I need some enhancements, or this is what need. I think so. There is some unrealistic expectations there, or this is something I want to try something new there. All sort of things comes up in that picture, and it's even easy for a client and even it's easy for you to understand. Both the ways it works good. Even in my initial phases when I was a BA, like just having 3-4 years of experiences, right? Whatever we talked on the meeting, right? Hey, everything is like that, it's going to work like that, and client was like very excited. Hey, yes, that's good, this is what I'm looking out for. So we are like all in a confident manner that we are going in the right directions. Probably 1 month 2 months later, when we have documented everything and we start creating and we given a demo, the client was like, oh, this is what not I don't want. And then we get into all discussions. Hey, you given us a sign off, you're happy with that, we have given you a demo, but no, but this is something realistic, unrealistic. I'm looking for more like fancy stuff, or I'm looking out for more something new to be bring in. So all those things we went up into all those discussions. So please make sure you're breaking down your requirements into smaller chunks and getting sign-offs from the clients and giving them demos as much possible using flowcharts with requirement documents and videos, so that there is no gap between you and the clients, basically. Okay. So now moving on to the types of requirements. Now, since we have discussed about the requirements, we get it into the requirements, we talked about what are the failure activities, we have started writing out the requirements. Now, you need to make sure how you need to segregate the requirements. Now, you get the requirements from the client. Okay, I want to create a web app, right? A shopping app using an e-commerce portal. All those things are there, right? I want some pictures. I want a database. I want a user base. I want load tests to be good. I want supporting activities. I want everything to be there. Now you need to make sure how you're going to segregate the requirements as well. So requirements on a high level are divided into two basic things: functional and non-functional requirements. So there are business requirements as well. What is solution requirements are, what are transition requirement, what are stakeholders requirement. This is how you're going to broken down into higher levels of trees. But the requirements finally is divided into two segments: functional and non-functional requirements. Functional requirements are related to functionality of the requirements. Non-functional are related to non-functional requirements. Means that are not related to functionality, but they are acting as a support to the existing functionality, or the requirements that will help you run your requirements well. The functionality of that system. Let me explain you more better so that you will be getting a better understanding. But before that, let's first understand what is business requirements. Let's talk about each, and then I will be telling you functional and non-functional. So the statements or the goals or the objectives, outcomes that describes the change initiated or the business areas specifically wants to achieve something related to business, the sales, marketing, etc. are typically the level of business goals. Like something they want, like business, hey, I want this project to be created like that. I want certain specific color combinations. I want to target, my competitive target is there with Amazon. Although like we are a very small company, but our future goals is to like be a company like Amazon, right? With a whole lot of inventories, whole lot of products, everything from every ground reality needs to be there, right? So similarly, there are multiple other giants like the Alibaba there from China that's coming in picture. How what are they doing? Because always the competition goes between Alibaba and Amazon, and that keeps on going in. How that happens? What is the customer relationships between them? How that happens? All sort of things are business requirements, right? Then stakeholders requirements. Describe the needs of the stakeholders, what they actually want. Basically, an example, let's take it like the customer service department head asks for implementation of the project in phases wise manner, right? As I mentioned, that whatever the business requirement that comes in, like suppose they want, let's continue with the same example because this is how you're going to learn it. E-commerce app that we are creating, a shopping portal for Amazon. In such cases, we have that app in place. Now there are like close to like 5 or 6 clients there on the call, and all of them are talking about, hey, we want this, we want this is how we want to move forward. I even want pictures, I even want sign in, login, dashboard, payment gateway, cart is needs to be there, finally shopping needs to be, client can add 5 addresses, right? All those requirements have done it, right? Now there are 4 5 people, everybody is adding, hey, I want this, I want this, I want this, and I want this. So you have 4 different things, you jotted it down. Now being as a client, you need to check, being as a BA, hey, stakeholders, which one you want first? Which you want, you can't survive right now. So we will be going with a phase one where we're gonna have all these. Is that fine? Or in that phase one, what all you want? So what are you checking is like stakeholders' expectations, that hey, you 5 guys are there, you're all telling me I will be doing all of them. I'm not denying that I will not be doing any one of them or I will not be doing any part of it. But can you guys let me know what has to be done first so that you're satisfied with our performances? Because first and second phases are something that even you need to show your impressions that you're well able to do that. Plus, strategically, BA even needs to take into consideration that whatever we want in first phase are even interdependent because we need to show them end-to-end functionality as well. So if this sometimes the stakeholder says, okay, I want a dashboard, but I even want a payment gateway. Just try to relate. He is not talking about the products first, whereas we should first go with the products. Dashboard is something not important at the moment, but what the stakeholders want, right? Are they want to even go live? Probably. It all depends upon the client. Some clients say, hey, I'm not in a hurry to go with the live, but I want first the dashboard should be there. I want to go step by step. I want to first want client to be login. I want first sign to go to the dashboard. Then he goes into the shopping portal, look out for 20 different categories, right? Select it and goes to the cart and finally goes to the payment mode. And finally, the product is being ordered and shipped and delivered. These are the step by step approach. Now I want to go with step by step approach. Now the stakeholders that you're having a discussions with says, hey, why don't we let's go with step 1 and step 5 first? Why don't we go with step 1, 5 and 8 first? So the question comes in. So now over here, BA needs to be even smart enough. So this is what I'm telling you, the tactical skills that happens when you're having a discussions with clients. Tactically, clients are even very smart enough. They want everything in a very short time, right? Or they want first you guys to check whether you have that relevancy or that whether that capability of delivering the most important things in a short period of time. Or sometimes it happens they are smart enough, they are getting into something that you are not aware about, they're checking with you on the databases part, or they want to check with you that whether you are working in that similar areas or do you have that expertise, right? And they will try to put you up into difficult situations. Being as a BA, you need to be smart enough. As I mentioned, you need to divide your work into smaller chunks and negotiate with them. If they even come up, hey, I want step 1, step 5, and step 7 first. Probably, if you talk about as per the guides, or if you want things to work stable, step 1, step 2, step 3 needs to be there first. If they want to accurately go. Still, we don't have problem. But being as a BA, just think from the point of prospect. You're gonna have sign in, you're gonna have dashboard, but you're not be showing any products. But you're starkly taking away to the payment gateway. But for what reason? Think about when you don't have any products. For what reason you are taking it to the payment gateway? There are no. So being as a BA, you need to be technically smart enough. You need to be well negotiable skills as well. That hey, something I think so in this whole product. Probably in first release, we should only go with the product list because sign in is something a very simple thing that everybody can make it, and it's just like a short effort of time. So let's go with sign in and product first. Probably second option you can propose is something. Hey, stakeholders, I understand that your expectations are like that, but let's go with step 1 and step 2 because it will help us with a complete flow. And similarly, we're going to have like step 7 then. So this is how you need to negotiate. I'm not saying always go with step 1, step 2, and step 3, but try to find out a relation between those steps. We can even go with step 1 and step 2 and step 7, but try, are the relationships there? When you will be giving them demo, will they be able to understand it? It's not always about what they want, we have to deliver that, but we need to even show them the path. If we go by that way, it's going to help you better. So suggestions should even parallelly keep on coming in from the client, like to the client basically from a BA. This is how we need to move forward. This is how we can think of going ahead. This is what we can demo to you guys. In this short span of time of like one sprint, we can get this done. If you want the complete product list, it's probably going to take another 6 sprints or probably 2 releases. So these sort of discussions, negotiations, smartness, all should be there with a BA when you're dealing with the stakeholders. Because 5 guys jumping on one guy, probably 1 or 2 BAs, you end up into multiple puzzles and requirement phases. So you need to be smart enough on those areas. Requirement is something that's always very important. Okay, moving on to the next, we have a solution requirements. So once we discuss the business requirements, stakeholder requirements, the solutions we are proposing in, what kind of solution we can propose it, what can be done in the implementation size, what all the different requirements that will be helping us out to develop that system. We are developing the solutions into 2 phases, basically functional and non-functional requirements. Now, what are functional requirements? Functional requirements are expected features of the systems like registering a user, making an online purchase are all functional requirements. As I've given you an example of the online purchases only. So how are you going to log in? How are you going to make a system? What is going to be there are all functional requirements. This is how the functionality of the system works in. So next is non-functional requirements. The non-functional requirements are the requirements which are related to the behavior of the system. Like every page loads in 5 seconds, for example, non-functional requirements. So now you need to probably define or like you need to difference between what are functional and what are non-functional. So functional means that you're doing an online purchase and you're navigating to that particular platform and you will be getting some details around it. But the non-functional requirements are for navigating to that platform, how much time the page is taking in, right? Is that it's every page is loading loudly in 5 seconds. That are non-functional requirements. So another example, non-functional requirement are those which supports the functionality of the system. It's not impacting the functionality. Whereas in order that functionality to work fine, you need to make sure that the non-functional requirements are there in place. it will not impact, but it will make some delays, or it will make some supporting issues, or some or the other way it will be helping your functional requirement to work fine. Let me give you one more example of functional and non-functional requirements. Like functionality of like signing in, going to a platform and doing the shopping is functional requirements. Non-functional is the moment you signed it, you went to dashboard page, it takes like 3 seconds. Hardly it's gonna take like 1 second. That's non-functional requirement. The moment you reaches up on the landing page, you see lot of products there on your homepage. But the product names are there, but the images are not getting correctly being shown. These are again non-functional requirements. That image is coming in, but they are distorted. Your functionality is working because you can click on it, you can add it to the cart, but the images are distorted. That is non-functional requirement because your flow is never stopped. You can sign in, you can select that, you can go to cart, and you can do the shopping. But the images are distorted. You can't see your product rightly. You have seen at the bottom it's been written, okay, iPhone 11 is there. It's white color. It's written in the text format. You're aware because you simply have to buy the product. You're very clear that you have to buy iPhone 11 white, right? So you simply click on it. iPhone white is there. You move it to the cart and you booked it. So your functionality is never impacted because you can click on it and you can go till the end and buy that product. But non-functional requirement that gonna supports you up is that the images are distorted. So you can't see that image right now. But probably it's gonna take like 7 seconds, 10 seconds, right? Or even 15 seconds to get come out of it. Sometimes it even do happen just because of internet, right? Even you need to make sure what browsers you're using in. So all these things are non-functional requirements. So in other words, we can even say that non-functional requirements are those that helps you support your functionality or taking actions on your functionalities are all non-functional requirements. Okay. So the next comes is transition requirements. Now in the transition requirements, we identify describes the capability of the solutions or under what conditions solution will met to facilitate the current state or like the future states. Transition requirements are very specific period requirements. Examples like the user must be trained and will be able to use the system efficiently. Previous year's data should be migrated to new systems and corporate reports. Probably like transition requirements are like you went on with a smooth application of your application and it's been like 1 or 2 years now. Everything is working fine. And you want now to check like whether your previous data or your user base has decreased it. You need to make sure that your earlier client, which are there on your older app, suppose, or like some of your clients that done your shopping in 2019 are not doing their shoppings in 2020, right? You need to check, are these users being moved out to the new application if they're using the older version? Are the persons who are using the older versions are being migrated out well, transitioned to the new applications? So these kinds of requirements certain times comes in picture. Like the client reaches out to, hey, we have a new older app, but that was there on a different platform or a different database or a different technology. Now what I want is I want the similar things to be created on a different platform with the new users or like with the new technology. So will you help me transfer my older users to the new one without the users being getting impacted? You're transitioning one thing from the another. You're generating reports, right? Hey, how many users are there in 2019 who did shopping that are not doing the shopping in 2020? So if you see a big hike or a down in that, you can probably think of like why the customers that are there in 2019 are not doing the shopping in 2020. Did they find out the different platform? Are we are not giving the right products, or we are not giving the right discounts and the price, there is a price gap. All sort of discussions comes in picture. So these are all certain transition requirements are there. Okay, so now moving on to next is like the requirement engineering. So we call it as requirement feasibility as it. So now since we have talked about what all the different requirements are, business transition requirements, different types of feasibility and non-feasible requirements are, right? We need to now understand what all the different how the requirement is more feasible, right? Whether it's technically feasible or not, right? So for all such cases, we need to make sure that we have an internal discussions with our team members as well around what needs to be taken care, how that needs to be taken care. So we prepare a feasibility document as well. So this is how that's been created. So 5 types of feasibility studies. So it doesn't mean that you have to go with all 5. There can be any best possible way you can go with. Now you since have all your requirements are there in picture like business, transition stakeholder, no functional, non-functional. Now you need to check whether these requirements are even feasible enough. Because client may come up with anything. Oh, I want something in C, I want something in database, I want something like that. It needs to be look like that. So you need to even check, do you have that all legal compliances even there? If the client wants, hey, I want to deal with Amazon, my thing will be there. So Amazon working in different countries. Do you have those all legal prospects are there? Is your company capable? Do you have that legal feasibilities as well? If we go with that long-term approach, do we have all the compliance being there and within our company? Whether we will be able to do that, whether we will be able to make those financial investment at the first end, later we'll be getting that from the client. Are we all legal capable? That's first thing you need to identify. You need to reach out to your legal team. You need to check with your teams whether that's feasible, proposed plan is ethical as per the requirements. Second, whatever the client is asking for, are we technically feasible? Whether we will be able to do that. You need to check with the dev leads. Hey, these are what I'm getting the demands coming in from the client. Are we able to do that before giving them a final go ahead and a sign off? Are we technically capable that if we have some apps on the older tool and the new one we are making on a different technology, can we really move the users from older technology to the newer technology? Do we have that feasibility? Are we technically really possible? This is what something needs to be checked on: technical feasibility. Schedule feasibility. The client wants everything to be delivered by July. They are very competitive there in the market. They want in the short duration all these deliverables. Are we capable enough to do that? Do we have this bandwidth? Do we have the right skill sets? Or do we have the right amount of employees to get this done within by July? Or can we do that like in May, June, and July? We're going to have 3 deliveries and they are very strict around it. Whether we will be able to meet these scheduled timings, right? How economically we are feasible? What is the cost involved? Because they're going to make payments in 3 regular intervals, one in 2019, 2020, and 21. Are we going to make an additional investment if we want to build legal activities, databases, what kind of a databases you need, whatever the aspects are there, depending upon your projects, whether we will be able to meet that. Are we feasible? Do we have those right capabilities to deal with that? All those discussions needs to happen here. So you need to check with your team members, your clients, your internal team members, whether if that's possible or not. So in that same feasibility, we check for economic feasibility, technical feasibility, operational feasibility, control, efficiency, services, timelines, optimizing resource. On all these areas, we validate that whether that's possible to have feasibility or not. And accordingly, we take a decision that whether whatever the client is proposing, are we determined to have and go ahead with if that's feasibly possible. And that's what where we take a decision finally. It's just validating whatever you are doing is will be practically possible. Are you not missing anything? Because being as a BA, you are working on the requirement part, but that's not make sure that you are even working on having other stuffs even been done. Okay. So now moving on to the next, let's talk about there is one another topic that comes in is the requirement engineering, validation and verification. Now you have the requirements there in picture. We talked about feasibility, requirements are even being gathered. Now talking about what the user together for checking the products, services, met requirements, and fulfills its intended purpose. We need to now validate whether the process of confirming the completeness is correct requirements. So we need there's very important question, and this is even an interview question, so just guys keep that in mind. What is the difference between validation and verification? So validation and verification is part of the requirement engineering, right? Validation ensures that the requirement achieves started the business objectives, meet the needs of the stakeholders, clear and understood by the developers. Whereas the verification is the process of confirming that the designed and the builds product fully address the documents required. Verification consists of performing various inspections, test analysis through product lifecycle. Validation is a process of confirming the completeness or the correctness of the requirement. Is that complete? Is that corrected, right? Are we using the right objectives? Are we meet the needs of the stakeholders? Are all validation. And in the verification, we validate is the process that we are following is correct? Are we documenting things right? Are this consist of various inspection test cases so that we develop the right product? So in simpler terms, if I talk about validation is something that we create and verification is something we validate what we created. Let me tell you with more clear picture. Verification, I'm building the product right. Validation is I'm building the right product. You do the unit testing, you do the integration testing, you do the automated testing. Over here in the validation, you did the UAT or a usable acceptance testing. So you are making a right product and I'm building the right product. Am I building the right product? Am I building the right product? You validated that. Over here, you're verifying that whether I am, or over here in the validation, you assured using the UAT testing, yes, I'm building the right product. So it's just about checking and validating those up. Let me tell you with one more example. Suppose you created out a web page that has a home page, contact us section, then you have about us and all those things, right? You develop something. The developer did that, right? Being as a BA, you come and verify that as per the business logic, when the moment we click on the motto, whether we are going to the home page, right? Do we have the contact us section? Do we have the Google map? Whatever the business logics or as per the business requirements are there, are the things there? Yes, they are. You did your part. Now with the verification, QA comes in picture, or like the tester comes in picture. He validates, he verifies the pages, whether it's been done, whether we have the right page. If we click on this, what is happening? Are there no page breaks? Whether we have the right data, whether we have the right pictures, or whether we have right things or not. He did that part. But now the validation comes in picture and confirms from the client prospect. What is customer acceptance testing? Means UAT. The customer person comes in picture and validate. Hey, if I click on about us, is that giving me the right details? Whether we have the same picture that we have shared with them? If we are clicking on the Google map, it's either taking me to the right locations. So whatever you developed and tested, they are validating that is that correct or not, based upon the usability, based upon the client thoughts, based upon the business that what we discussed. Is that being developed the same way? And this is how you validate and confirm that what has been developed is correct. Let me give you one more example. Suppose in verification, you validated whether if we go with a shopping cart, if I gonna enter 10 products, if I gonna click on plus plus sign for 10 times, that product will be added on my cart for 10 times. Correct? That is verification. You tried with that and 10 times the product is added to your cart. Whereas in validation, what you're gonna do? You're gonna check as per the validation logic, as per the business requirement, nobody can add more than 5 products to a cart, similar product to a cart. Now with validation, what gonna happen is the client gonna check. In verification, what you're doing, you're just checking if I click on the verifications, right, on plus icons, how much time I'm clicking on that plus icon, those much time the product is added to my cart, right? And this is how you understand that the functionality is working fine, because the moment you click on that cart, you click on that plus icon, 10 times the product is added. That is verification and it's working fine. You're okay. There is no problem in that. But validation will define and help you understand, hey, as per the logic, nobody can enter the similar products more than 5 times. So after you're gonna fifth time you click on that plus icon, it will give you an error message when you do it for the sixth time. Is that happening in? But that doesn't mean that verification, whatever you're doing is wrong. That functionality is working fine. But as per the validation process, it should stop after 5, which is not happening in. So you validated that functionality with a business logic, which is the UAT or the usability test happens. Okay. In verification, you are validating the functionality. In validation, you are confirming the business logic. Is that working as per the business logic or not? Right. It's same like I can give you another example. You are a fitness freak guy, right? I ask you to travel 2 kilometers, right? Now there are two ways of doing that. Either you walk and cover 2 kilometers. There is another way is you run and cover 2 miles. So probably instead of taking kilometers, let's take 2 miles. So there are two ways of doing that. Either walk and complete 2 miles, either run and complete 2 miles, or either use the bicycle and complete 2 miles. There are three options, right? But in the validation, you need to check that as per the business logic, how I need to complete that 2 kilometers. Because if in the business logic it's been written, you can only use either you can walk or you can use bicycles. You can't run. So if you're using the third method of like running, that will not be considered. So your product is not right. Logically, you can do it by all three, but as for the business logic, you're not allowed to run. So you either have to walk or either have to use bicycle. Okay. So this is validation as per the right product. Okay. So now guys, the last topic that comes in, like since we have talked about all the requirements, we talked about everything now. So the most important document now comes as the requirement traceability matrix. What is this? So requirement traceability matrix is all about making the requirements stack to each requirements, tracking the requirements requirements based upon their functionalities or their business logics. How are you going to track? Like in the future, it may come, right? You're there in the middle of the project. Something says, hey, I'm working on this functionality. Can you confirm me what is the supporting docs related to that? What all the test cases are? On what functionality, what all the test cases are? What is the functional requirement? What client really wants? I want more detailed descriptions. So this matrix has been created where we have BRDs, FSDs, and test cases, and their priorities are there. So what does this requirement talk about? So when I've earlier talked to you about the business attributes, the business requirement IDs are over here. What is this business requirement related to reservation module, the payment module, right? This is example we have taken it for a flight booking where we have a reservation module, the payment module. So we have the unique requirement IDs. Hey, BR document 1 is for reservation module, BR underscore 2 is for payment modules. So these are the two requirements we have. These are the certain functionalities that we have in place, like one booking way, tickets, multi-card, credit card, debit cards are all functional requirements that we have in place. Then we have test cases tagged to it, like TC001, TC002. So if anybody wants, hey, can you tell me for booking of tickets, what all the test cases we used or we written it up? So you will directly say, okay, let me go to traceability metrics. You find this up. Okay, TC001, TC002 are the two test cases that we validated. Testers comes back to you and say, hey, can you help me out with the reservation modules? What's there in the business requirements? So we can refer to all these areas. So this is like how you're going to manage all your business requirements. Being as a BA, you will be involved in project. There is a huge amount of requirement that comes in. Probably 100, 200 requirements comes in. How are you going to manage them? If somebody, your project leads, your project managers, when they're having negotiations, hey, can you just let me know, or what is there in that cart? What all the business logics are there in the cart? What the client wants? Can you just show me that? You want to give them immediately within 5 minutes. How are you going to do that? So if you're going to have this traceability metrics, it's important and it's easy for you to track things. Okay, under reservation modules, I have three things: one-way ticket booking, round booking, and multiple ticket bookings. So these are the three that's there in the BRD. So okay, if you refer BR1, you will be getting all those details around these three modules. Okay, I want something related to reward points. If you're going to do shopping for $10,000, what I will be getting in rewards? Okay, reward section is coming under BR2. That's on payment module. So you can refer these documents. And this Excel sheet basically usually created on Excel sheet with hyperlinks, or we have some internal tools from the company where they create out all these things and anybody within the team can refer those up. But it's the responsibility of a BA to manage that up clearly. Because if you're working on a project that's going to go for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, there are a lot of things that needs to be done on this. So this is how you need to manage your traceability matrix. So that's all for today. And with that, we ends up today's session. Thank you guys.
Janbask training. Learn and grow.